Besides, Whoopi done wrote everything I'm gonna say here tonight, so it's all right. Ain't that right, you smelly?
I didn't write that.
Hollywood has always presented itself as progressive and forward-thinking, but behind the glamorous red carpets and Oscar speeches lies a darker history that the industry would rather you forget. Today, we're exposing 20 major racial controversies that shook Hollywood to its core. 1. The birth of a nation. Let's start at the very beginning of Hollywood's troubled history with race. In 1915, director D.W. Griffith released The Birth of a Nation, a film that revolutionized cinema technology while simultaneously spreading vicious racist propaganda across America. This wasn't just any racist film. It depicted black people as dangerous and inferior while portraying the Ku Klux Klan as heroic saviors. The movie used white actors in blackface to play crude stereotypes, showing supposed freed slaves behaving inappropriately in government and threatening white women. Time magazine critic Richard Corliss explained that the film's brilliant storytelling technique made its racist depictions even more dangerous, as audiences believed what they saw was historically and emotionally true. The impact was devastating. The film sparked riots in northern cities and helped revive the dormant Ku Klux Klan. Despite being recognized as a technical masterpiece that advanced filmmaking, it remains one of the most harmful pieces of racist propaganda ever produced. The controversy continues today, with film schools struggling to teach their technical innovations while acknowledging their horrific content. The Birth of a Nation set a terrible precedent for how Hollywood would depict Black Americans for decades to come, normalizing racist stereotypes in mainstream entertainment. 2. Mark Wahlberg's hate crimes.
I'm Irish American and never would I pretend to be an African. You needing a history lesson because you forgot where you came from.
Before Mark Wahlberg became a beloved Hollywood action star and producer, he was a teenager in Boston with a violent history of racist attacks for which he served jail time. In 1986, when Wahlberg was just 15 years old, he and his friends chased a group of black school children on a field trip to the beach, throwing rocks at them and shouting racial slurs. One victim, Kristen Atwood, was hit by a rock and still has a scar from the attack. The group received a civil rights injunction, essentially a legal warning that another hate crime would mean jail time. But 2 years later, in 1988, Wahlberg violated that injunction in horrific fashion. According to court documents, the then 16-year-old attacked 2 Vietnamese American men while trying to steal beer. He knocked Than Lam unconscious with a 5-foot wooden stick while using racist slurs, then later punched Johnny Trin in the eye. Police reports noted Wahlberg made numerous unsolicited racist remarks about Asian people during his arrest. Wahlberg was charged with a crime, but ultimately served only 45 days of a 2-year sentence after pleading guilty to felony assault. In 2014, he applied for a pardon, citing his charitable work and business interests, but withdrew the request in 2016 after significant public backlash. His victim, Kristen Atwood, publicly stated that it was a hate crime and should remain on his record forever. The controversy resurfaced in 2023 when Wahlberg was chosen to present the SAG Award to the predominantly Asian cast of Everything Everywhere All at Once, leading to widespread criticism on social media about the inappropriate choice. 3. Mel Gibson's anti-Semitic tirade. Mel Gibson's career nearly ended in 2006 when his drunk driving arrest exposed deeply disturbing anti-Semitic views. The incident became one of Hollywood's most documented falls from grace. On July 28, 2006, Gibson was pulled over in Malibu for driving 87 mph in a 45 mph zone with a blood alcohol level of 0.1, but the DUI arrest became secondary to what happened next. According to the arrest report obtained by TMZ, Gibson launched into an anti-Semitic rant against the arresting officer, Deputy James Mee, who is Jewish. Gibson allegedly screamed that Jews were responsible for all the wars in the world and asked the deputy if he was Jewish. The original 8-page police report detailed explosive language and threats, but superiors reportedly ordered it rewritten to remove the inflammatory content because Gibson was a spokesperson for the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department and friends with Sheriff Lee Baca. When the unedited report leaked to TMZ, the backlash was immediate and severe. ABC canceled development on a Holocaust miniseries with Gibson's production company. Major Hollywood figures distanced themselves from the actor-director, whose 2004 film, The Passion of the Christ, had already faced accusations of anti-Semitism. Gibson issued multiple apologies, but his problems didn't end there. In 2010, leaked tapes captured him screaming racist remarks, including use of the N-word, at his then-girlfriend, Oksana Grigorieva. In 2020, actress Winona Ryder publicly recounted Gibson making an anti-Semitic oven dodger joke to her in the 1990s, referring to Holocaust victims. 4. Michael Richards' Laugh Factory meltdown.
Wait a minute, he's not going here, David. You're not funny. That's what you reset. Never had no show, never had no movie.
In November 2006, Michael Richards, beloved as Kramer from Seinfeld, committed what many consider career suicide during a stand-up performance at the famous Laugh Factory in Hollywood. On November 17th, Richards was performing when a group celebrating a birthday in the balcony became louder than expected while ordering drinks. Richards made racially charged comments about the group, which included Black and Hispanic audience members. When Kyle Doss, a Black audience member, heckled back, saying his friend didn't think Richards was funny, the comedian exploded. A cell phone video captured what happened next. Richards screamed the N-word repeatedly, shouting, "He's a n, he's a n," while making references to lynching, telling the hecklers that 50 years ago they'd be hung upside down. The crowd gasped in horror, with many walking out in disgust. The video remained unknown to the public for 3 days until TMZ obtained and released it. Jerry Seinfeld quickly arranged for Richards to appear via satellite on The Late Show with David Letterman, where Richards attempted to apologize, saying he lost his temper and went into a rage. When some audience members laughed, thinking it was part of a comedy bit, Seinfeld sternly told them, "Stop laughing. It's not funny. The damage was irreparable." Richards essentially retired from stand-up comedy after the incident, making only rare appearances. In his 2024 memoir, Entrances and Exits, Richards reflected on the incident, acknowledging it broke him, but claiming he's not racist, just deeply insecure. He described spending nearly 2 decades doing deep analysis to understand where his anger came from. 5. Ted Danson's blackface performance.
A couple of bottles of this here malt liquor.
Drink on, honey.
With every sip, you get better and better, baby. Yo, snatch smell like a kingfish.
I didn't.
In October 1993, one of television's biggest stars committed an act that horrified thousands of witnesses and sparked a national debate about race and comedy. Ted Danson, then starring in Cheers, appeared at a Friars Club roast of his girlfriend, Whoopi Goldberg, wearing blackface makeup with exaggerated white lips painted around his mouth. The performance at the New York Hilton before more than 3,000 people was deliberately shocking. Danson used the N-word over a dozen times, made crude jokes about his interracial relationship with Goldberg, and at one point ate watermelon. According to Roger Ebert, who covered the event, Danson's jokes drew smaller and smaller laughs until the audience was groaning, and he faltered trying to finish his written material. Many attendees were appalled. New York City's first black mayor, David Dinkins, was present and visibly disturbed. Talk show host Montel Williams, who had a white wife and newborn biracial child, left in tears and later resigned from the Friars Club, saying he felt like he was at a KKK rally rather than a comedy roast. The shocking twist? Goldberg defended Danson fiercely, revealing she had written much of his material herself. She told critics they should have expected offensive humor at a Friars roast and praised Danson's courage to perform in blackface. She attacked Williams and other critics, suggesting they were publicity-seeking or didn't understand comedy. Despite Goldberg's defense, the backlash was intense. The scandal dominated headlines, with Goldberg noting they knocked Somalia off the front page. Danson and Goldberg's relationship ended less than a month later. In a 2009 Fresh Air interview, Danson called the performance a graceless moment in my life, acknowledging it was a terrible mistake. 6. John Wayne's white supremacist interview. John Wayne, the iconic American Western star, gave a Playboy magazine interview in 1971 that exposed deeply racist views. The interview resurfaced on social media in 2019 and sparked renewed controversy about whether his name should be honored in public spaces. In the interview with Richard Warren Lewis, Wayne was asked about civil rights activist Angela Davis. His response was shocking. "I believe in white supremacy until the blacks are educated to a point of responsibility. I don't believe in giving authority and positions of leadership and judgment to irresponsible people." He continued with disturbing comments about slavery, saying he didn't feel guilty about the fact that generations ago, people were enslaved. He compared slavery to a child getting polio, just a fact of life. Wayne also claimed black people had it better in America than anywhere else in the world and got better breaks than white people. On Native Americans, Wayne was equally callous, stating he didn't feel America did wrong in taking the country from them. He described Native Americans as selfishly trying to keep the land for themselves and called the genocide against them just a matter of survival. The interview also contained homophobic remarks, with Wayne calling films with gay characters perverted and using slurs to describe LGBTQ people. When the interview went viral in 2019, it sparked serious consequences. USC's School of Cinematic Arts removed an exhibit dedicated to Wayne. Orange County Democrats passed a resolution to remove Wayne's name from the Orange County Airport, though the proposal faced resistance. California lawmakers had previously rejected a proposal for John Wayne Day in 2016 after learning of his racist statements. 7. Roseanne Barr's racist tweet. Roseanne Barr torpedoed her own comeback in spectacular fashion with a single racist tweet that cost her everything in a matter of hours. The speed of her downfall became a case study in how social media can end careers instantly. In May 2018, ABC had just announced the renewal of Roseanne for an 11th season. The revival had been a massive ratings success, averaging over 18 million viewers. Then on May 29th, Barr posted a tweet comparing Valerie Jarrett, a black former senior advisor to President Barack Obama, to an offspring of the Muslim Brotherhood and Planet of the Apes. The reaction was swift and devastating. Barr's Roseanne co-star, Sarah Gilbert, publicly condemned the tweet as abhorrent. Within hours, ABC Entertainment President Channing Dungey announced the cancellation of Roseanne, calling Barr's statement abhorrent, repugnant, and inconsistent with our values. Barr initially posted an apology and announced she was quitting Twitter, but the damage was done. Consulting firm ICM Partners dropped her as a client. Hulu removed the Roseanne reboot from its streaming service. Viacom pulled reruns from all its networks, including TV Land and CMT. In the aftermath, Barr gave an interview to Sean Hannity on Fox News, claiming her tweet was a political statement about the Obama administration, adding that she was sad that people thought it was racist. She later claimed she was under the influence of Ambien when she posted it, prompting the drug's manufacturer to respond that racism is not a known side effect. ABC later announced The Connors, a spin-off without Barr, in which her character Roseanne Connor was killed off due to an opioid overdose, The Swift. Cancellation demonstrated how quickly networks will act in the social media age when stars cross clear lines of racial offense, especially when public outrage reaches critical mass. 8. Ellen DeGeneres' toxic workplace. Ellen DeGeneres built a brand on kindness with her talk show motto, "Be kind." But in July 2020, that carefully constructed image crumbled when a BuzzFeed News investigation revealed allegations of a toxic workplace culture at the Ellen DeGeneres show. Current and former employees came forward with shocking accusations. According to the report, the workplace culture included racism, sexual harassment, and intimidation. One black woman recounted being told her natural hair was too harsh and not really her. Multiple employees of color reported microaggressions and racist comments from senior producers. The allegations extended beyond racism. Employees claimed they were fired for taking medical leave or attending family funerals. Others described a culture of fear where speaking up meant risking their jobs. Several employees alleged sexual harassment and misconduct by senior producers. The contrast between Ellen's public persona and the reported behind-the-scenes reality was stark. While she preached kindness to millions of viewers, employees described being told not to speak to her if they encountered her in the hallways. The show promoted a positive work environment publicly while allegedly maintaining the opposite privately. 3 top producers were ultimately fired following an internal investigation by Warner Media. DeGeneres addressed the controversy in the show's Season 18 premiere, apologizing and taking responsibility, saying things happened on her watch that should not have happened. However, many felt her apology was insufficient. The scandal had lasting consequences. The show's ratings declined significantly. In May 2021, DeGeneres announced Season 19 would be the final season, ending the show's nearly 2-decade run. While she claimed the decision wasn't related to the controversy, the timing was impossible to ignore. 9. Scarlett Johansson's whitewashing controversies. Scarlett Johansson found herself at the center of multiple whitewashing controversies that highlighted Hollywood's persistent problem with casting white actors in roles meant for people of color. In 2017, Johansson starred in Ghost in the Shell, playing Major Motoko Kusanagi, a character from the beloved Japanese manga and anime. Asian American activists immediately criticized the casting, arguing that Hollywood was once again taking a distinctly Asian story and replacing the Asian lead with a white actress. The controversy intensified when it was revealed the studio had tested visual effects to make Johansson look more Asian, a plan they abandoned after backlash. Johansson defended her casting, saying she wouldn't have taken the role if she thought she wasn't the right person for it. However, the film underperformed at the box office, earning only $170 million. Globally, against a $110 million budget, with many attributing the failure partly to the whitewashing controversy. Just a year later, in 2018, Johansson was cast to play Dante Tex Gill in Rub and Tug, a transgender man who operated massage parlors in 1970s Pittsburgh. The LGBTQ community erupted in protest, arguing that a transgender actor should play the role and pointing out the lack of opportunities for trans performers. When criticized, Johansson's representative issued a dismissive statement telling critics they could be directed to Jeffrey Tambor, Jared Leto, and Felicity Huffman's reps for comment, referring to cisgender actors who had won praise for playing transgender characters. The response was seen as tone-deaf and arrogant. The backlash intensified until Johansson withdrew from the project, issuing a more thoughtful statement, acknowledging she had learned the transgender community felt the casting was harmful and that she should have thought more deeply about the role. 10. Emma Stone in Aloha.
Everything. I'm a peppermint tea girl.
Well, you have a good time.
I meant with you, sir.
In 2015, Emma Stone faced significant backlash for playing a character named Allison Ung in Cameron Crowe's romantic comedy Aloha. The character was written as a quarter Hawaiian and quarter Chinese, but Stone is white. The casting sparked immediate criticism about Hollywood's erasure of Asian and Pacific Islander representation. Critics pointed out that the role could have gone to an actual mixed-race Asian Pacific Islander actress, providing much-needed visibility for an underrepresented community. Instead, Hollywood chose one of its biggest white stars. Director Cameron Crowe issued an apology on his blog, calling himself deeply grateful for the dialogue and explaining that the character was inspired by a real person he knew, a red-headed local woman who looked nothing like what people expected based on her heritage. However, critics argued this didn't excuse the decision, as there are many mixed-race Asian actors who don't fit stereotypical expectations either. Stone herself addressed the controversy, telling an Australian news outlet that she understood the frustration and disappointment. She acknowledged being cast as a character whose lineage didn't reflect her own, calling it a F. Up on so many sides and expressing regret that the role didn't go to someone who better represented the character's background. The film was both a critical and commercial failure, earning negative reviews and barely making back its budget. While the whitewashing wasn't the only problem with Aloha, it became one of the most discussed aspects of the film, and a prominent example in growing conversations about representation in Hollywood. 11. Hollywood's Mickey Rooney Yellowface.
But that was 2 weeks ago. You cannot go on or keep ringing my bell. You disturb me. You must have a key made.
Long before recent Yellowface controversies, Hollywood had a deeply offensive history of white actors portraying Asian characters with exaggerated makeup and stereotypes. One of the most notorious examples is Mickey Rooney's performance as Mr. Yunioshi in Breakfast at Tiffany's. Rooney, who was white, played Holly Golightly's Japanese landlord with buck teeth, thick glasses, exaggerated squinting eyes, and a cartoonish accent. He portrayed the character as buffoonish, angry, and sexually inappropriate, embodying every negative stereotype about Asian men that existed in 1961. At the time, the performance barely registered as controversial to white audiences and critics. The film became a beloved classic, with Audrey Hepburn's performance as Holly Golightly celebrated as iconic. But Mr. Yunioshi remained a painful reminder of Hollywood's racist caricatures for Asian American viewers. Decades later, as awareness of racism in entertainment grew, Rooney's portrayal became increasingly recognized as offensive. Asian American actors and activists pointed to Mr. Yunioshi as a prime example of how Hollywood dehumanized Asian people, reducing them to grotesque stereotypes for white entertainment. In 2008, shortly before his death, Rooney issued an apology for the role, saying he was heartbroken that his portrayal was offensive. He expressed regret, noting that if he'd known how it would be viewed, he wouldn't have done it. However, some felt the apology came far too late, nearly 50 years after the film's release. Tilda Swinton and Dr. Strange. Whitewashing.
It's not just being bitten by a spider, although being bitten by a spider is all good, and we love that.
When Marvel Studios cast Tilda Swinton as the Ancient One in Doctor Strange, replacing a Tibetan character from the comics with a white British actress, it sparked intense debate about Hollywood's whitewashing and its complex relationship with China. In the comics, the Ancient One is a Tibetan sorcerer living in the Himalayas. Asian American actors and activists were outraged that Marvel would take one of the few significant Asian characters in their universe and cast a white actress instead. Advocates argued that actors like Michelle Yeoh or other established Asian performers could have brought authenticity and representation to the role. Marvel and director Scott Derrickson offered a controversial defense. They claimed they were trying to avoid the Dragon Lady stereotype and didn't want to portray Tibet in a way that would anger Chinese authorities, who consider Tibet part of China. They suggested that making the character Celtic instead was progressive. This explanation backfired spectacularly. Critics pointed out that Marvel was prioritizing access to the lucrative Chinese market over Asian representation. Writer C. Robert Cargill, who co-wrote the script, openly admitted in a podcast that Marvel was in a lose-lose situation with China, but chose to eliminate the Tibetan character rather than risk angering Chinese censors. The controversy intensified when leaked emails showed actress Tilda Swinton had privately contacted Asian American comedian Margaret Cho, seemingly seeking absolution for taking the role. Cho later revealed the exchange felt uncomfortable, as if Swinton wanted a free pass from an Asian person. Cho hadn't been consulted about the casting. She was approached after the decision was made. Swinton and Marvel received significant criticism from Asian American advocacy groups. Iron Fist actor Louis Tan publicly called out the double standard, noting that Asian actors rarely get opportunities for major roles in Hollywood, but lose the few Asian roles that exist to white actors. 13. Jake Gyllenhaal in Prince of Persia. When Disney cast Jake Gyllenhaal to play Prince Dastan in Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time, they took a character explicitly rooted in Persian culture and gave the lead role to a white American actor, exemplifying Hollywood's persistent whitewashing problem. The film was based on a video game series set in Persia, modern-day Iran. The title itself identified the character's ethnicity and cultural origin. Yet Disney cast Gyllenhaal, then had him wear dark contact lenses and get a spray tan to appear more Middle Eastern, a cosmetic approach to ethnicity that many found offensive. Middle Eastern and Iranian American communities expressed frustration that Hollywood was once again erasing their representation. Critics pointed out that Persian actors existed but weren't considered for a role playing a Persian character. Gyllenhaal's casting sent the message that even in stories explicitly about non-white cultures, white actors remained Hollywood's default choice. Gyllenhaal himself seemed uncomfortable with the controversy. In interviews, he acknowledged the concerns, but defended his casting by noting he'd worked hard on sword fighting and parkour for the role, missing the point that the issue wasn't his physical preparation, but the choice to cast a white actor in the first place. The film's producers offered the standard Hollywood excuse. They needed a bankable star to justify the massive $200 million budget. This reasoning perpetuated a vicious cycle. Actors of color couldn't become bankable stars because they weren't cast in major roles, and they weren't cast in major roles because they weren't bankable stars. 14. Emma Watson and Oscar diversity controversy.
I'm here for all of the witches.
The 2016 Oscars became infamous as Oscars. So white-dominated headlines after the Academy nominated only white actors in all 20 performance categories for the second consecutive year. Emma Watson's response highlighted how even well-intentioned white allies sometimes miss the mark on racial justice. When actress and activist Emma Watson was asked about the diversity controversy, she gave an answer that sparked backlash. Watson suggested that rather than focusing on racial diversity at the Oscars, people should focus on gender diversity in Hollywood, essentially redirecting the conversation from racism to sexism. Watson's comments frustrated many people of color who pointed out that black women and women of color face both racism and sexism. They're not separate issues that compete for attention. Activist Mickey Kendall responded with what became known as #Solidarity is for white women, highlighting how white feminists often prioritize gender issues while dismissing or minimizing racial concerns. The incident illustrated a common problem in progressive spaces. White allies sometimes try to shift focus to issues that affect them more directly. Watson's response suggested viewing diversity as a zero-sum game, as if addressing racial inequality somehow prevented addressing gender inequality, when in reality, both need simultaneous attention. The 2016 Oscars controversy ultimately led to significant changes. The Academy dramatically expanded its membership to include more people of color and women. Subsequent years have seen more diverse nominations, though many argue that much work remains. 15. Louis C.K.'s response to race debates.
Maybe if touching a nut kills you, you're supposed to die.
Before Louis C.K.'s career imploded due to sexual misconduct allegations, the comedian had already faced criticism for how he handled racial issues in his comedy and public statements, revealing tensions between edgy humor and responsible platforming. In his stand-up and his show Louis, C.K. frequently addressed race, sometimes thoughtfully and sometimes problematically. While he occasionally offered incisive commentary on white privilege, like his famous bit about time-traveling white people having it easier, he also made jokes that many black audience members and critics found offensive or reductive. The comedian faced particular criticism for how he handled the N-word. In several interviews and comedy bits, C.K. discussed the words power and history, sometimes using it explicitly. While some praised his willingness to engage with difficult topics, many black critics argued he was using racial trauma for comedy in ways that centered white feelings rather than black experiences. In 2015, C.K. cast himself in a role on his show where he insisted on using the word chink despite an Asian character's discomfort, framing his character as fighting against political correctness. Critics pointed out the episode seemed designed to position C.K.'s character as reasonable while portraying concerns about racial slurs as oversensitivity. C.K. also came under fire for how he discussed the phrase Black Lives Matter. In interviews, he suggested the phrase might exclude others, echoing all lives matter rhetoric that many viewed as dismissive of specific black concerns about police violence. When challenged, he seemed frustrated that his audience didn't understand his nuanced position. When the sexual misconduct allegations against C.K. emerged in 2017, many noted he'd shown a similar pattern with race and gender, prioritizing his own perspective and dismissing concerns from marginalized people. The pattern revealed that edgy comedy can sometimes mask a refusal to engage seriously with critique. 16. Damon Lindelof and Watchmen backlash. When Damon Lindelof created HBO's Watchmen series centering on the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre, he received both praise and criticism, highlighting the complex challenges white creators face when telling stories about black trauma. Lindelof made the bold decision to open the series with a graphic depiction of the Tulsa Race Massacre, one of the worst incidents of racial violence in American history. The event had been largely erased from history books, so bringing it to mainstream attention was seen by many as important. The show featured a predominantly black cast and directly engaged with themes of racial injustice. However, some critics questioned whether a white showrunner should be centering a story on black pain and trauma, even with good intentions. Questions emerged about who should tell stories of racial violence and whether white creators could truly understand and respectfully depict such experiences. Lindelof was transparent about his concerns. Before the series aired, he published essays acknowledging his anxiety about getting it wrong and the responsibility he felt. He hired black writers, including Cord Jefferson, and consulted with historians and community members about the Tulsa Massacre. He admitted he initially feared tackling race, but realized avoidance was itself a problem. 17. The Academy and Oscars So White. The Academy Awards faced a reckoning in 2015 and 2016 when activists coined the hashtag #OscarsSoWhite. After all, 20 acting nominations went to white performers 2 years in a row. The controversy exposed systemic racism in how the film industry recognizes excellence. The issue wasn't just about one year's nominations. For decades, actors of color had been dramatically underrepresented among Oscar nominees and winners. When they were nominated, they often played stereotypical roles, servants, criminals, or historical suffering figures, rather than complex leading characters. In 2015, despite acclaimed performances by actors like David Oyelowo in Selma and performances in films like Top 5 and Dear White People, every acting nominee was white. April Rain created the hashtag Oscars, So White hashtag, to call attention to the exclusion. When the 2016 nominations repeated the pattern, with films like Creed, Straight Outta Compton, and Beasts of No Nation shut out of major categories, the backlash intensified. Major stars, including Jada Pinkett Smith, Spike Lee, and Will Smith, announced they would boycott the ceremony. The controversy dominated entertainment media coverage for weeks. Academy President Cheryl Boone Isaacs, who is black, acknowledged the problem and announced major reforms. The Academy invited 683 new members in 2016, focusing on diversity. They implemented rules requiring members to stay active in film to maintain voting privileges, addressing concerns that the voting body was too old and out of touch. The changes did produce results. The 2017 ceremony saw Moonlight become the first LGBTQ film with an all-black cast to win Best Picture. Viola Davis became the first black actress to win an Oscar, Emmy, and Tony. Subsequent years have seen increased recognition for diverse performers and filmmakers. 18. Kevin Hart and the Oscars host controversy in December 2018, Kevin Hart was announced as host of the 91st Academy Awards, a dream job for any comedian. Within days, he stepped down amid controversy over homophobic tweets and jokes from years earlier, sparking debates about accountability, apologies, and who deserves second chances. After the hosting announcement, activists resurfaced old tweets where Hart used gay slurs and made jokes about beating his son if he exhibited gay behavior. The tweets dated from 2009 to 2011, and Hart had previously addressed some of them, but he'd never fully apologized. The Academy reportedly gave Hart an ultimatum: apologize sincerely or lose the hosting gig. Hart initially refused, posting on social media that he'd passed on the apology because he'd addressed these issues before and didn't want to keep revisiting his past. He framed the situation as a distraction from his growth. Hours later, Hart stepped down as host, posting that he didn't want to be a distraction from the ceremony. He issued an apology to the LGBTQ community for my insensitive words from my past, but the apology felt forced to many, coming only after he'd tried to avoid giving one. 19. Harvey Weinstein and the Me Too movement. While primarily known for exposing sexual harassment and assault, the Harvey Weinstein scandal and resulting #Me Too movement also intersected significantly with racial justice, revealing how power dynamics affected women of color differently than white women in Hollywood. In October 2017, the New York Times and New Yorker published investigations detailing decades of sexual assault and harassment allegations against mega producer Harvey Weinstein. The reports included accounts from dozens of women, including major stars like Ashley Judd, Gwyneth Paltrow, and Angelina Jolie. Actress Alyssa Milano amplified the #MeToo hashtag, originally created by black activist Tarana Burke in 2006, encouraging women to share their experiences. The movement exploded, with thousands coming forward. Weinstein was ultimately convicted of a horrible crime and sentenced to 23 years in prison. The racial dimensions of the scandal were significant, but often overlooked. Black and Latina women had been trying to expose Hollywood's sexual misconduct for years, but were largely ignored. When they came forward, they faced harsher scrutiny and less support than white accusers. Lupita Nyong'o wrote a powerful New York Times op-ed about her experiences with Weinstein. Other women of color shared stories of being propositioned, harassed, or assaulted, but receiving little media attention compared to white actresses' accounts. The pattern revealed that society values and believes white women's stories more readily. 20. Birth of a Nation remake controversy. In a cruel irony of history, a 2016 film called The Birth of a Nation, deliberately named to reclaim the title from the infamous 1915 racist propaganda film, became embroiled in controversy that destroyed its Oscar hopes and highlighted how sexual violence allegations intersect with racial justice. Director Nate Parker created a powerful film about Nat Turner's 1831 slave rebellion. The movie was celebrated at Sundance, where Fox Searchlight bought it for a record $17.5 million, positioning it as a major Oscar contender. The film aimed to tell an important story about black resistance that Hollywood had long ignored. Then, just before the film's release, journalists resurfaced a harassment case from Parker's college years. In 1999, Parker and co-writer Jean Celestin were accused of raping an unconscious female student. Parker was acquitted. Celestin was convicted, but had his conviction overturned on appeal. The victim, who remained anonymous, later died by suicide in 2012. Parker's response to the resurfaced case was widely criticized as insensitive. He focused on his acquittal rather than expressing empathy for the woman or acknowledging broader issues of consent and assault. His defensive stance alienated many potential supporters, particularly women. The controversy created an impossible situation. The film told an important story about racial injustice that needed telling, but promoting it meant supporting a director accused of sexual violence, asking audiences, particularly women and sexual assault survivors, to separate art from artist. If this video opened your eyes to Hollywood's complicated racial history, hit that subscribe button and notification bell. Drop a comment below telling me which controversy shocked you most, or if there are others you think should have made this list.